Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being, and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being. Welcome to the 312th episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast. Last episode, number 311, I spoke about how bias is being integrated into AI processes within HR. If you listened to the episode, what did you think? Let me know via the details at the end of the show. For the last year, the podcast has been fortnightly, but if you're missing weekly content, you have nearly 7 years worth of episodes to listen to. And if you want my handy guide that lists the episodes with a clickable link, you can get it at diverseminds.co.uk/downloads. So why are we talking about toxic positivity? I think toxic positivity is a subject that isn't new. With the world imploding, many people want to distract, cover over. And in episode 186, I talk a little bit about this in the International Day of Happiness episode. I explain the difference between happiness and toxic positivity. But in essence, toxic positivity takes positive thinking to an extreme. It's not just about stressing optimism or being happy, but it does minimize and deny traces of human emotion that wouldn't be classified as happy or positive. Toxic positivity is the overgeneralized belief that dire or a difficult a situation is, people should maintain a positive mindset. And you might have seen this actually. People talk about this when they get cancer diagnosis, that people often say to them, oh, this is a blessing. This could be the best thing that ever happened to you. And I really don't think that's very helpful. It's the idea that all emotions, especially the negative ones like frustration, sadness, anger, should be suppressed or put to one side or thought of much more favorably and replaced by an upbeat, optimistic facade. I would say this is also culture dependent, where Eurocentric US style culture will buy into this premise a lot more. I do think that from what I've read, corporate cultures will lean into this, particularly again, Eurocentric US style cultures. So this isn't necessarily across the world. And I think that if you look at the East in particular, sort of Eastern philosophy and culture, they do acknowledge much more that sadness has a place. So I think this is definitely again, much more of a global North perspective and a Eurocentric one. So the challenge is that there's no good way to repress emotions, and we don't want to repress emotions. While we do want to behave professionally, absolutely, I don't also think it's about putting on this happy clappy mask at work or otherwise, because I think what happens is then we collapse. And I think this good vibes or positive vibes only can really backfire, can really impact negatively on mental well-being. And actually, the dismissive nature of toxic positivity isn't at all easy to sweep under the rug or under the carpet. Toxic positivity is a way of making people feel bad, of shoving their thoughts and beliefs away, of making them deny what they're feeling, in essence, to almost coerce them into thinking another way. And it can also cause people to disassociate or disconnect from themselves and negative feelings, and then thinking, oh, well, if I just was, more resilient, for example, and you know how I feel about that, do check out bonus episode, why resilience isn't a sticking plaster, for more about that, then maybe I wouldn't be feeling this way. And that isn't helpful. And I think that if we insist or push people towards feeling only positive emotions, we're telling them that something's wrong with them or that they shouldn't be feeling these feelings otherwise. And there's some really good information on the betterup.com blog on toxic positivity. So what happens in the workplace and what can we see? So you may say to me, well, no, you're saying all this stuff about toxic positivity, but what about complainers? Aren't they soul suckers in the workplace? And surely that's toxic. Absolutely. And there is a saying, and you probably heard it, that misery loves company, but equally so does joy. Now, joy again is different from toxic positivity, and do check out episode 186 if you want to find out more. But we want to create containers and spaces for people to be able to voice opinions, air grievances, etc. But toxic positivity, what happens in the workplace is it functions to real barrier to risk management. So if it's only we're being positive, you're seeing this person in a difficult light, you're seeing this person in an inappropriate light or in a negative light. Well, actually, the result is you could have ethical violations. You could have people getting away with poor behavior. You could have people getting away with fraud. You could also have things like harassment not being reported because people are worried that they're going to be seen as dramatic. They witness something or they experience something. And also, if everything's all positive, how do we flag up any kind of operational failures? So this idea of, well, no, nothing's wrong here because we're all so happy, that's not helpful. And I think that we've really got to look at that, because that can have an incredibly negative impact on staff, service users, customers, beneficiaries, etc. So the thing is, when comfort is prioritized over truth, and you see this, don't you, with whistleblowers, people have to whistleblow because the internal processes aren't listening to them. Now, that could be bullying behaviors, or it could be this toxic positivity. It's very difficult then to readjust and course correct and go along the right path. So you're just carrying along. Everything's amazing here, isn't it? Really, really good. And I think you also see this with any kind of disabled discrimination, race discrimination. We've just seen it, I think, with Jason Arday, actually, not necessarily toxic positivity, and God rest his soul. It's really important to mention him and the tragic story that, the flip side of the toxicity towards him and what it did. And actually, if everyone's like, oh, this is such an amazing organization, he must have been the wrongdoer, this has a very, very serious impact. So it is about finding these creative, constructive spaces where staff can air concerns and grievances that will be addressed without fear of reprisals. So I really hope you're enjoying the content of this podcast and you want to keep up to date. If you are, then join my newsletter. When you join my mailing list, you can now choose the download you would like. Just go to diverseminds.co.uk/downloads and choose the resource that works best for you. So what can we do then to address this issue of toxic positivity? So I think one of the first places that you can start, and it's all about starting small, but small is powerful, is having a time, place, and space for moaning. So this might not be very constructive, but let's say you have 5 minutes before a team meeting at the end, or maybe at the start of a team meeting, or add this to your team charter. We're going to have a space for moaning and airing grievances. We're also going to have a space for constructive feedback, and it will look like this. Why not? Because I think often it's like, when you get told to have time for worrying and you have 10 minutes and you write things down and then you stop worrying, kind of similar to that. And the second thing you won't be surprised to hear me say is language is so important. So how can we address people's concerns and how they're feeling without completely shutting them down, or also letting it go into the weeds, as it were, and it really being draining? So, for example, if someone comes to you with something that they want to talk about, a toxic statement would be, well, someone always has it worse than you do. Whereas you want to flip it and say, okay, I'd really like to understand more. I can see that you're really upset. I perhaps don't have the same perspective of you as you, but I can see this is really upsetting you. A toxic statement could be, you'll never get anywhere with that negative attitude, or, you've got to be positive to move forward, as opposed to, this sounds like it's really having a negative impact on you. Let's talk more about it. What could be done differently? Another toxic positivity statement, and this, you might have heard this in families quite a lot, is we never get more than we can handle. When you're ready, I'm here to help, is the flip side to that. So there's no reason you can't do that, as opposed to, let me know if I can support you, or what support do you think you might need? I don't see the problem, versus that sounds like you have a lot to deal with. That should be easy for you. Oh, wow. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe sometimes in context that makes sense, but it's okay to have an off day and ask for help would be the flip side. So you get a sense. It's the same things we talk about with supporting mental health and well-being. I think it's also about being honest and open about staff survey results, and don't ice that moldy cake. Yes, you do need, I would say it's a big yes to you said we did, or we're planning to do, or we did. This is really, really crucial, because this is why there's staff survey fatigue and everyone's fed up and sick of it, because they just don't feel that anything's being done. Make sure HR aren't rolling their eyes as well. Number 4, at trades unions, staff in meetings. Now, this may not apply to all sectors, but I've seen this happen, and I've seen HR sit there huffing and puffing when trades unions or staff representatives are saying, well, actually, we do need more days for bereavement leave. We need to think about cultural context, or, we do need to think about the price of staff catering, because actually certain staff can't afford the meals. And I just see the eye rolling and the huffing and puffing. This is really terrible. And of course, that's just toxic behavior. But the idea that, they're always moaning about things. Well, actually, their job is to be critiquing the organization. The fifth thing is, and you might have this, is anonymous online reporting and a phone line to help people be open and explain what's frustrating them. And maybe they don't want it to go anywhere. They don't want action to be taken. But sometimes, I think a lot of time actually now, staff need a space to vent. And then finally, it's about training managers to be able to handle and manage quote unquote difficult conversations. So remember, we all come into the workplace with baggage from our backgrounds, and this will be expressed inadvertently in different ways in the workplace. So our family roles do come in and out of the workplace in unexpected ways. If we were always criticized at home, when someone gives us feedback, we may receive it as criticism and react in a particular way. As one example, it may be that everything was hushed and you didn't talk about things that was under the carpet. So when things are out in the open in the workplace, it feels very uncomfortable. So I'm not saying that the workplace is a place for therapy where we all need to disclose and declare and talk about this, but it's helping people to manage expectations and how they do this, and how criticism stroke feedback might feel. So there is a difference with toxic positivity, joy, happiness, and constructive feedback. Toxic positivity is unhelpful because it pushes things down under, makes people feel repressed, and can have significant negative impact on mental well-being. Of course, we don't want workplaces to be a complete moan shop and complaint center, but how do we create spaces for that? And also, how do we then act and receive criticism sometimes and feedback to change things for the best? So I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget, I run workshops, training sessions, and keynotes for organizations all about creating positive, happy, and equal workplaces. So please get in touch with me at Layla, Leyla, at diverseminds.co.uk. I really hope you've enjoyed today's show and shows over the last 6 years. So if you have, please leave me a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. And of course, you can also leave me an anonymous or with your name voice note on bit.ly/SPKPDMP. Don't forget my TEDx talk where I talk about my experience of culture, race, and mental health in the workplace. And that link is bit.ly/TEDxWolves, WOLVESLO. And if you enjoyed it, please share, like, and leave a positive comment on YouTube. And don't forget to join me in 2 weeks' time where I'll be talking about how to use employee voice and staff surveys to improve your organization and business. Until then, everyone, take care, stay safe, and I hope to catch you in the next episode. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.